And thanks everyone for taking time out of your day to spend with us. Very excited about this session. We're going to continue our ideation, webinars, and today very excited to talk about how to drive AI balance in your Microsoft journey. So we got some great keynote speakers, and we're going to have a wonderful fireside chat. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. So just a little bit about your host, CompuSoft Digital. We are a number one Microsoft AI frontier partner. We help companies globally deploy the Microsoft stack across the AI, Copilot, autonomous agents workloads, business apps, D365, CE, F&O, and the Power Platform components. And then everything is about modern data. So the Fabric, Databricks, Purview solutions as well to get to that holistic outcome from your agentic AI strategy. Now, enough about us. We're here for you today. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a fireside chat. Just again, very excited about the keynote speakers we have. Just the way that we're going to run this is we're going to have 4 questions, which will be round robin. They're going to go through each of the audience members. And then we'll have about 10 minutes per topic, and then we'll have some time to ask the experts some questions at the very end. So if you have questions along the way that we're not addressing, please put them in the chat, and we will get to them at the end of the webinar. All right, just as a introduction into our great speakers that we have, very excited to have Jamie on the call today. She is the founder and one of the performance coaches for a company called The Win Room. Great organization, really helping companies optimize their performance from a balance perspective. So again, Jamie has worked at Microsoft, Gardner, Major League Soccer as well in the past. We were just talking about soccer before we jumped on. She's also a sales coach for Harvard Business School, and then also participates in TED Talks. So she is a keynote speaker there. And her LinkedIn information is below. So I highly recommend everybody connect with Jamie, check out her content. It's amazing, and looking forward to hear what she has to say today. Next, we have Pooja, who, as we all know, is the rock star who is driving out AI when it comes to D365 sales. Pooja is a product head for AI and intelligent apps across the D365 CE sales component. She's also worked at SAP, IBM, and HCL, and she is an innovator, a disruptor, and a thought leader. Again, I put her LinkedIn profile there. Recommend everybody connect with Pooja, check out the content that she's pushing out. And it's just amazing, Pooja, with everything that you're putting together from that standpoint. And Lori, I did see the question come in. Yes, this will be recorded. We will also send out the presentation after this. So next week, you'll have all that information ready. And then last, but certainly not least, is Mr. John Rastia, who I've had the pleasure of working with for many, many years. He is the CompuSoft Digital CTO and SVP of Strategy. Works very, very closely with the Microsoft team, the product team from a development perspective, just giving ideas and thoughts and things like that, and has been working with the product since V1. Again, John is also recognized under the National CI Review as one of the top 40 CIOs on the move. So again, very excited to have these amazing panelists on the call today. And again, highly recommend that you connect with the Win Room, reach out to Jamie, Pooja, and John, and excited to kind of move forward. So before we start, we're really talking about balance. And on the right, we got the definition of what does balance mean. And on the right, when you look at McKinsey, they really kind of focus on some models that show performance increases when you bring that balance in everything that you do. So I want to challenge everyone on the call today as we start talking through some of these questions. Get your mindset not only in the technology, but also outside the technology. And what I mean by that, when you look at rolling out your agentic AI solution, you got to bring balance into the equation. Think of it like an equilateral triangle. You don't only want to focus on one of these, you want to focus on each one people, who's going to use it internally and externally, and how do we optimize and make them more efficient and effective? Processes, how do we have the baseline so that we can measure, optimize, and continue to kind of move those forward as well? And then you have this thing called technology, where you got to bridge all the islands of data. And when you bring that balance into the equation, you will succeed. So just some food for thought as we move into this discussion. Now, is the next step. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start with our first question. So, the first question is, where do AI projects typically go off the rails? And why does it always come back to driving balance? So, Jamie, we're going to go ahead and start with you, and would love to get your thoughts on, what you see with some of these initiatives and what's important from your point of view. Over to you, Jamie.
Sure. Thanks, Greg. Thanks for the intro, and thanks for having me today. As Greg mentioned, I spent a lot of years at Gartner and at Microsoft working with technology and business leaders through transformation. And for me, like I anchor in all things people and how people create the balance within the process and the technology. So when I think of AI initiatives, it's really a people initiative, because if you don't get the human side right, and I know that many of you all know this, the technology can't deliver. So in my experience with working with so many companies through their technology transformations and different initiatives, it's rarely, like, failure is rarely because of the technology. It's more because of how humans are built and wired. And where they go off the rails is because people tend to naturally retreat to their own strengths. So when we have tech-oriented people that are going to really anchor in the tools and the tech, the process people are going to fixate on the steps and the structure, and the people are going to focus more on like the communication and the support. And because if we have too many people focused in one area, it tends to take it off balance, that triangle. So if people don't understand the why, they resist the change. If the processes aren't designed specifically for AI, the workflow breaks and everybody just doesn't work. Or the tech and the architecture, they don't support the vision. So it's really, when I think about it, it's how are you thinking about your own natural, how you're communicating about the initiative, and then is that landing? It's like, are you listening for how other people are listening, and how do you move different people that have different strengths and focus areas of their natural wiring? How do you help to communicate effectively around the change that needs to happen? So that balance piece and learning how, as a leader of any sort of AI initiative, you have to be able to meet people where they are, and how to create intentionally changing the way that you interact with the people that you're trying to move forward.
Yeah, great feedback. And Jamie, I know you really kind of focus on the people side and bringing teams together. It is kind of like organizational alignment's the most important key point from that standpoint. Yeah.
Right. In understanding that not everybody, some people, when I work with technology leaders, a lot of times recently I remember talking to someone, I said, you do know not everybody thinks like you. Yeah. We all think in different ways. And so understanding, people can be messy, but they're actually quite predictable if you know what to look for. So that's a lot of, what I work and coach with, technology leaders and business leaders on, like, you're not leading if people aren't listening. So how do you communicate so that your message is landing to get people motivated to move forward?
Yeah, great feedback. I love the question, right? Not everybody thinks like you. And, that's so relevant when you think about it. Good stuff. Well, Pooja, from a technology and balance and people and process perspective, where are you seeing, from a Microsoft perspective, AI going off the guardrails, and what's important from your point of view?
Yeah, sure. I would love to talk about it. Thanks, Greg, for having me here. And thank you, Jamie, for talking about the people aspect of it. I love when you say make sure that everybody's hearing what you're talking about, like everyone hear things differently. And I think it's a great point. Well, when I look at it from a technology standpoint, when you're deploying AI, it's not just about the model. It's about an ecosystem, and I usually frame it as 4 enablers. Um, the first enabler is a strong data foundation. It's non-negotiable. You will need a well-governed, high-quality, privacy-safe data, clean lineage, and access pattern. If your foundation is weak, everything that you're building on top of this becomes brittle. So it's important to have the right data balance. The second one is how these models and systems work for you, like quality for you. Models don't succeed because they're powerful, because they succeed because they are measured and tuned for the right business scenarios for based on your data and your signals. And this is where we at Microsoft really do evals, give you ability to fine tune your models, run evals on your data and see, does it make sense? To look at the out of the box solutions which are built with these domain knowledge, with AI which understands the specific scenario, so that you don't get misbalanced based on something that you're choosing but is not working very well for you. And that's where a lot of program fails, because they're not missing capability, but because they're missing the evaluation discipline, and they're not choosing the right thing that that has all the grounding that works well for you. The third element of this is safety, compliance, governance back in the workflow, where, especially at Microsoft scale, this layer determines whether you can ship. You need a responsible AI guardrails. You need to have a policy enforcement, consent, data boundaries, secure infrastructure, the protection that you need, not just for your own self, but even for your customers. It gives you the confidence to iterate. And the fourth one, and this I think is predominantly very important, is the experience and ongoing monitoring capability, where people are very worried in terms of, if I leave AI out, what it's going to do, what is happening. And AI value shows up only when the experiences are right, where the system has a capability to learn over the time. So pick up solutions which have UX that help you build trust, that explains the reasoning, that clarify boundaries. For example, in our out-of-the-box agents, we provide something called AI supervisor experience that help you monitor agent actions. This is where the adoption and trust is earned. So I would say AI is not one dependency, is a coordinated stack, and you need to look at all these 4 levers to understand how you are implementing right and executing right across these layers.
Yeah, great points, Pooja. Thanks for that. John, what say you from this question?
Let me see what I can kind of add a little bit more to that. From what Jamie and Pooja had just said. Tough act to follow. Thanks everybody for joining. But really, what I've kind of seen, I mean, AI is not something that's new, right? AI, has been out for a long time. So a lot what I've heard Jamie and Pooja say, I want to kind of add to that, because it's not so much about the technology pieces that's ever changing. I know Pooja lives on that every single day. I think you probably wake up and something's new and you're developing something new and on the bleeding edge. But AI projects rarely fail due to weak algorithms or lack of compute. They fail, due to that, lack of imbalance. Most initiatives that I've seen derail are in one of the more critical following areas. And I've heard, Jamie and Pooja talk about it, but again, just kind of following on is, number one, it's that data imbalance between volume, your quality of data, and your velocity of that data. Number two is around your model complexity. Over parameterize or fragility. Wait, did I just make up a new word? Sorry. Or what I'm trying to say is or underpowered simplicity. I've seen that. But prototype to production gaps. The disconnect between innovation speed and operational reliability continues to grow. We need to get that balance. We need to pull that back in. And finally, I've heard, again, just kind of coming over the top, organizational alignment. misaligned, incentives, among your technologists, within your organizations, domain experts, legal and leadership are just being misaligned. And virtually every, post-mortem, the root causes, traces back to loss of discipline across, these four main areas. The organizations that succeed are not the ones that move the fastest or build the largest models. They're the ones that master the art of driving balance at scale under uncertainty and without compromise.
Well, well stated, John. And since we're making up words, I mean, just to kind of recap the human ethics aspect, Jamie, you really kind of hit on that. Personas, who's going to use it. I love the question you asked. Not everyone thinks like you. I mean, that's just such a powerful statement. Really made me kind of take a step back. And as I formulate project teams and, business units and things like that, you really need to kind of think how others are interacting from that standpoint. So anything that add on that, Jamie?
No, I always go back to like, have you ever gone onto somebody else's computer and had to go look for their files and how they've organized their computer? And you're like, why would someone do this?
Oh yeah.
Right? Because we all think differently. And so it's really about how do you think about your own thinking and how do you understand someone else's, right? And to be able to quickly figure that out. And it's not super difficult, but understanding how to meet people where they are. And you hear over and over again, the number one thing that disengaged employees, I don't know what the statistic is right now. I think it's like 70%, the last I looked, of people who are disengaged at work. And the number two, that the reasons they're disengaged is they don't feel seen, heard, or valued. And so if you could be a leader who can help a person to feel seen, heard, and valued, that's the win right there. Once they feel that, they'll run through a brick wall. They'll do, but it's about meeting and being present with people to get them to move towards adopting the new ways, the new technology, the new AI initiatives.
Yeah, well stated. Check out the Win Room, y'all. A lot of great content there. So thanks for that, Jamie. Pooja, I love the 4 pillars that you just mentioned: the data, responsible guardrails, experience, the tech aspects. Any additional color commentary on those that you'd like to kind of speak to?
Yeah, I think it's all about them choosing the right solution. I think that's the most important part. I would say, besides those technical guardrails or the levers that you look at, choosing the right solution that works for your organization, which you can use to help build trust to move your processes forward. I think that is the one I would say is the most critical.
Yeah, it really, I mean, solution is going to be critical in any decision that you make, something that can scale and perform. And yeah, great points. John, any additional color commentary?
Just kind of coming over the top there, the organizations that will dominate the next, probably next decade of AI are not those with the largest, data, moats or just, volume and sheer that, but those that have mastered, the discipline, of these pieces that we kind of put out there. Again, it's bringing your people, to the table, understanding, what are all the different use cases, and by doing a lot of those, you're going to kind of take where your expectations of AI versus where reality is. And that's going to happen by bringing everybody to the table, technologists, business people, whether that's operational or just different parts of it. You're going to and like, Jamie said, involve them, pull them in. Don't let them sit on the sideline. Just, see what they want to think on that. Because again, that kind of helps temper, what, where we think, AIs versus where the reality is. And that's a big piece.
Yeah. A lot of great lessons and a lot of great feedback. Jamie, do you have something to add?
Yeah, Greg, I just want to mention, Pooja mentioned something that I think is important to double down on is user experience. And so when you making sure that you're involving people from a UX user experience standpoint, really leaning into that, that's a piece that I see oftentimes is missed. And obviously, if you don't know how what the users need, you're not going to deliver an outcome. So I just wanted she mentioned that, and that's so important.
Yeah, great feedback and great content, Pooja, on that front. So, all right, so we're going to move into a question real quick. So, survey poll should come up. And the poll is, what are the top 5 reasons why AI projects fail to meet business objectives? Unclear or misaligned business goals. We kind of talked about the continuity importance there. Data, poor data quality. We see that all the time. Readiness. Are you aligned? Does your team understand what the outcomes are we're looking for? And then underestimating complexity capabilities in addition to, poor change management and failure to integrate. So as those come in, just looking at the numbers, interesting from that standpoint. We do have about 12% of folks are around unclear, misaligned business goals. Data quality, we always see that one, a lot of islands of data. Organizational alignment and readiness, that's what the balance brings to the table. Understand the complexity, and then change management. I'm glad that one, people are focused on that one. It really does come to how do we train our users? How do we manage those as well? So good stuff. Yeah, a lot of interesting data points from that standpoint. So thank you for everyone that put into the poll. We're going to go ahead and close the poll out. And again, we'll send this information out after the webinar. All right, so now we're going to move into topic number 2. What are the AI technology dependencies enablers when required deploying an AI solution or strategy? So, Pooja, we're going to start with you on this one. So I'm going to turn over to you.
Yeah, sure. We touched a little bit upon this when I was talking about, what are the balance levers that we talk about as well. Let me ground this response to some of the poll options that you've also given. I also spoke about data quality, importance of the data is really critical. However, there's one thing where I hear a lot of customer talk about is, but my data is not clean, and especially coming in from a CRM world where customers are worried that my sellers were not recording anything. So if my past data is not right, would it give the right results? And I want to call out, while data is a very important lever, it's slightly different in the Gen AI world as compared to the pure AI scenarios, models that used to train on your data earlier. And you should look at it slightly from both lenses. While it is important to have the right data, these models, the Gen AI models, are pre-trained as well. And you need a good mix of the right data, but these pre-trained models who are not misaligned or not giving you information based on just past historical data. For example, in a CRM, typically sellers record their deals only when they're close to getting close. So if you look at it, your conversion rate is really good. But is that the truth? It may not be the fact. You might have been selling a particular type of product very well in past, but is that a right depiction of your future? May not be the case. So my point would be, while data is important, don't get worried too much on your past history, whether you have data or not. These AI models are pre-trained, will help you move forward. So data, though, is a good lever. It's not a blocker for you. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say that's a great point. If you could just kind of elaborate on how you're addressing that internally, I think that'd be great. But that's such a key point, Pooja.
Yeah, what we are doing is we are not just using AI to look at your past history. It's also looking at the trends in the market, where how others are performing, and giving you a recommendation. The other thing that we are also doing is that our agents are working around the clock to making sure your data is right as well. So, for example, if in your conversation you are talking to a customer and the customer is saying, "Oh, I really love your product. We would like to move forward. I think I will be able to pull up the budget to 2.5 million." It will go and update your CRM, but of course, keep human in loop so that you don't have to worry. So it's a little bit like those dog treats. When your dog is chewing, it's also cleaning the teeth. So, our agents are kind of cleaning your system, making sure the data is updated while you're doing it. So, those are the things that we're looking at to solve this problem for our customers.
Yeah, that is a great point. I just wanted to make sure, because we always bring up data, but data's never clean, right? It's never 100% that I've ever seen in my career. So yeah, that's a great point. So John, over to you. Any color commentary?
Yeah, I'm just gonna, I really agree with what Pooja just said there at the end. I mean, a lot of that data, monitoring capabilities is becoming so critical. I mean, being able to see, where our gaps are, a lot of those, helps us tailor things better because, when we deploy, an enterprise grade AI strategy, success is never a function of the model alone. It rests on a tightly integrated stack of technology and enablers and dependencies. Miss or invest in any of these, and the entire strategy, definitely or can stall. A concise battle-tested hierarchy that I share with most of my, C-suite and board that I advise right now are underneath, four main, technology enablers. And I agree, with Pooja. I mean, absolutely. It starts off with that modern data platform. I mean, your data is going to be, whether it's structured, unstructured, we're going to have some, challenges there. It's not going to be pretty at first, okay? But that modern data platform is going to allow us, to get in there, right? Right. So with no viable AI strategy can exist without a proper lakehouse or unified data backbone using the right platform. It's going to stall. Enterprise grade, identity and access fabric across there. What I'm talking about there is a zero trust access and compliance, capabilities with audits that satisfy the internal and external audits, so, such as, GDPR, CCPA, things like that. And again, like what I was just kind of talking about, is that monitoring capability, not optional. Most will cover, the data drift, but we need to take a look at model performance decay, latency, cost, and fairness of metrics in those, not only your test and QA environments, but all the way across to your production environments as well, and being able to access that, that information. But really, looking at also emerging, strategic layers, right? Designing your data models that allows an AI model to consult internal or external data with up-to-date knowledge bases before generating a response. These are the things that are constantly evolving. But as we see a lot of these, strategic layers out there, look at it, because it's going to essentially improve your accuracy, your relevance, and a lot of that fractional grounding capabilities.
Yeah, great points, John. Jamie, what are your thoughts from this question?
So when I saw this question, I thought of a conversation I was in the other day, and I was explaining. I love always trying to explain AI in ways that are just regular people, because so much of it is they just don't understand. Simplify it, and I said, think of AI like hiring. It's like hiring the most brilliant new employee that you've ever been around. They're capable, they have everything, but without onboarding, they're useless, right? And so when we think about the dependencies with any sort of AI initiative, big or small, and I always think to how do you start small, prove it out, make it bigger, to John's point. But what do you need? You need clean data. You both have said this already, right? So clean data, that's like the nutrition. Getting that as much as you can get it. What are you feeding it? And this is what I see this with so many business leaders don't understand. They want to build out in their own, like I had this recently with a well-known financial firm that I work with, and I coach their leaders. We were trying to explain the importance of data, how are they labeling their data? Because they have all these AI initiatives. And I said, it's like, think about it, if each part of your business went into the GPS to get to a certain thing that they needed, that was critical. And each GPS took them, if I don't know if people use Waze, whatever they use, took them to a different place. Mm-hmm. That would be crazy, right? But like breaking it down, like bad data and putting data in silos will take, you each have where you think you're going, and you're going in all different directions. It's not one source of truth. So this clean data, and thinking of it like a GPS, I find that resonates for people that, are really just starting to learn this. And simplifying it, right? Again, not everybody thinks like you. We have so many experts here on the call, people that have different backgrounds and different places where they're coming from, and what they understand about AI, and they don't. They either understand it from a people part, a process part, or a technology part, right? But so we've got the clean data. Defined workflow, so a playbook, in making sure we're clear on where we're going with it, and then just like coaching through the process, right? Like this is a process; it's a co-creation. So that when I think of that, I think of these are some of the key things that if you stick with these, these, I say they're simple, but they're not easy. These are the key things to make any sort of AI initiative successful.
Yeah, great points. You really gotta, resonate, right, when you explain it and you talk about it and the responsible AI part. And I tell you, the quote of the day, I love it, Pooja. You mentioned eating your own dog food is dual purpose, right? I mean, it's feeding your dog, but cleaning the teeth at the same time, kind of like the data integrity. And data will never be perfect, right? You have to start, and you have to, kind of find a starting point. If you want to maybe elaborate on that, Pooja, at all, or John, or.
Yeah, I would love to share this. Like, this is how we're talking about. I put a screenshot in the chat where this is how we're talking about the shift in the systems. Where earlier the systems were data, and then there were workflows and UX on top, which was all dependent on the structure and the information that you had. Now, this data, along with knowledge and information from web, it's bringing you insights and knowledge, which agents consume, work on top of this with intelligence, and then Copilot as an experience, which is dynamic experiences for you. And we are shifting from a system of record to a system of action. And this is where the value is getting created. And this is a very different shift than how people have been traditionally using their tools and technology, where it's very, very hard code and dependent on what is in there in your system. To now, these agents with prior knowledge is using the information which is there in your data to really create it as insights and provide it to you.
Yeah, just amazing stuff. Every time I see that slide, it's just exciting with what we get to do with the ecosystem and the platform, the outcomes that we get to deliver and drive. Just as a reminder to the audience, if you have any questions that aren't being addressed, feel free to put them in the chat window. We should have a few minutes at the end of the webinar to address those. So just wanted to remind everyone of that. Perfect. Okay, we're going to move into the next question, then survey, and then last question. So this is really kind of about, the leaders, right? What mindset shifts do leaders need to make to successfully guide their teams through AI? We talked about like the impacts, data, organizational alignment. We talked about not everyone thinks like me, but I mean, Jamie, you do a lot of professional performance coaching. getting executives ready for these like digital transformations. I mean, like, what are your go-to areas that you focus on in this particular topic?
Yeah, well, I always go back to, again, like, how do you think about your thinking? Most of us are, it's like you drive to work. Do you remember how you actually got there? So we're very taking leaders from being unaware to aware and very intentional in how they're communicating. I always, how I talk about it is, how do you get our leaders and our teams out of the war room and into the win room?
Yes.
And the war room is where a lot of times where we think about these initiatives, where war stands for working against results. It's where we doubt ourselves. We sort of focus on all the problems, all the hiccups that we expect and anticipate, and then shifting into that win room, which is what I need, what the organization needs, like the goals, where the direction we're going in. And so when we think about this sort of any sort of AI adoption, I want you to think about it less from like a technology mindset to more of like that human operating system mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So how do we operate as humans? Because as I said in the beginning, it's rarely a technology problem. It's more of sort of the people challenge with the technology. I mean, this has been going on forever. I mean, what we're speaking about is not, I remember back when cloud, and I'm not trying to relate it to exactly the same, but it's sort of change is hard for people. Everybody wants change, but nobody wants to change. And so people move, AI moves, very fast, but people move at the speed of where they trust and where they have clarity.
Yes.
And so it's really about how do you, as the leader, intentionally be aware of how are you communicating with clarity about what we're doing, why we're doing it, understanding what the person, whoever you're trying to influence, what do they need to hear? Like, what do they need? What is holding them back? What are the concerns that they have? And how do we remove those invisible barriers, that resistance? How do we get, because it's that, how do we get people comfortable and confident with using it? So it's really about like having transparency. They're not necessarily resisting, people don't necessarily resist change, but they resist confusion. Everybody's operating at such a I always say it's like you're trying to change a tire while you're going 90 miles an hour down the road. So any sort of change in their workflow is going to create some disruption, but understanding how it ties to their own individual goals and needs is going to make it way more effective in the adoption of it. Hey, this is what you said that you need for your business. This is what we're aiming to deliver for you. This is what you said you need, but you have to be able to have those interactions first. Sort of creating this and thinking of it. I mentioned co-creation before as well. When we think of this as sort of like we're practicing together, so much of this is new. It's a co-created way of working. Not these silos. So how do we do that? How do we co-create? It first starts with removing these barriers between tech and business, or the different users that are trying to deliver. So we want to really create that co-creative mindset, and that starts with how you're showing up, asking questions instead of telling, and be really being more aware and intentional about how you're communicating in every interaction. I always say, I talk about the new ROI, which is return on interactions, especially in the age of AI. And that means that in every conversation, you're either making money or losing money. You're either building trust or breaking trust. So being very intentional in how are you connecting, building trust, building clarity with the people that you're trying to drive this initiative with.
Yeah, no, great points. Be intentional, avoid the confusion is what I'm hearing, and break down the barriers. I mean, this is so important and relevant just with all the fodder out there and the noise around AI and things like that. So, no, great data points, Jamie. And then Pooja, I can only imagine what you go through on a daily basis. I mean, you're like in the middle of AI building all this from the ground up, and I can imagine the bright shiny objects that get thrown at you daily. I mean, how do you organize your team and get, executive alignment to move these products forward? What are some tips and tricks that you do?
Yeah, I love this question, Greg. I think having that mind shift is so important, and I love how Jamie's spoken about people. Jamie, I've definitely gonna listen to your TED Talks and check out Windroom. I love how you're talking about the way people think. Uh, if I talk about it from my experience, Greg, I think the biggest shift that we would love people to do is moving that shift from let's adopt AI because it exists. I see companies are in a race of saying we're using AI. And that's the mindset they come up with and say, we have a target to start building AI. What do you have? Where can and we would love to use it. And sometimes they start picking up these pieces and start putting it in the wrong processes. I think the biggest mind shift would be let's look at the AI tool and see how we can use them, to let's deploy, let's deeply understand our processes, break it down where human workflow is limiting, or there are challenges, where are the gaps, and then determine how AI plus these changes can solve that. So the shift you need is shift from technology first to workflow first, from AI as a feature to AI as part of redesigning and rethinking how you work. And the shift of fear of disruption to embracing it as a companion. And that's the mind shift that we're talking about, where you will bring more clarity, and AI will shift from a shiny object to something that's going to help you accelerate and really create value and transform the way you're working.
Yeah. And Pooja, important point that you called out was, the importance of starting with the workflow, the use cases that pulls everyone together. Definitely, we promote that as well. Any additional commentary on just that component from your point of view?
Yeah. Yeah, let me give you an example. We have this agent called Sales Close Agent. What it does is it reaches out to the customer, it talks to them about the products that you have, answer any question, and help you close that deal. Like once the customer is interested, it takes you to a website or helps you close the deal. We were talking to one of our customers. They're like, yeah, this is great. We want to send out email communications to our customers to say happy birthday and how are you doing? And sometimes they reply and say, look, we are also looking to find new product. And when they reply, we would want to use your agent. So you can we configure it to say send out happy birthday emails? And like you force fitting it. That's a marketing kind of a scenario. This is a sales close. So don't think about, oh, you have it. Here is the problem. Let me try and solve it. What do you actually want to do? That's a nurturing scenario. You want nurturing? Are you looking at closing? Like have that shift from here are the problems that I'm facing today and where I'm limiting myself. So, for example, I could not do account planning for every account because it was humanly not possible. Do you have a tool that can help me do that? Is the right approach rather than saying what tool you have. Oh, you have this tool, maybe I can solve it here and put it. And when you do this, you are probably taking a very short-term approach. You're not looking at scaling and long-term really improving your processes and creating an outcome. You will just achieve an objective of we have deployed AI. And I think that mindset shift is extremely important. And unfortunately, a lot of people at companies are driven by fear right now, where it's about, let me go and do something.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for the color commentary on that one. John, you want to close us out on this question?
Yeah, and I'm gonna, this question really, really excited me because this is both, where I live and what I sell. And Jamie, I'm gonna steal this, right from you because it really kind of brought something into me about your car tire issue. Most recently, we had a little bit of a blowout, out in the road in Houston, Texas. And we found ourselves with a tire that was completely out, and we safely got over, to the side of the road, and just kind of realized that, in these situations, I mean, these cars and semis are 70 plus miles an hour, and you're on the side of the road, and I'm quickly, changing the tire. And I look up and I kind of see these semis coming, and then the team's trying to slow things down and help out. But it was just, you know what? I stopped thinking about, the car, the issues, and the flat tire. I wasn't changing the flat tire anymore. I was getting us to our destination. It's just I completely forgot about, all that. Just I mean, hey, we have a place to go, and let the other team worry about the safety and trying to guide traffic away. But it wasn't changing the tire. It was the next thing. So we've been trying to solve business problems. It's nothing new. AI is just that new enabler that we have. And of course, that technology is new. It's progressed. So stop thinking of AI as a technology project. Start thinking of AI as a new operating system for the entire workspace. A few mind shifts that separate the organizations that I think quietly are pulling away or ahead from those stuck in perpetual pilots. Leaders have got to start thinking about, stop celebrating 90%, 98% accuracy in the sandbox, and start demanding the same rigor that apply to any mission, critical software products. Uptime, SLAs, rollback plans, cost per, inference, budgets. All those kind of pieces that need to go into those. Quit thinking about them as pilots and bring them into production. The superstar, 10x data scientist is no longer the bottleneck, or the hero. The bottleneck is repeatable, scalable, governed, audible pipelines. Yes, speed, I believe, absolutely still matters, but now with with these governors and that Pooja talked about before, those monitoring capabilities allow us to see, we're human in the loop escalation paths, and where we're missing data points that we can easily add to, where an AI is answering something, and an agent is answering something. We can see that, in real time by adding those data parameters, to it. So those monitoring capabilities are, I think, critical. But once you're in those pilots, we can make those tweaks. But as we start thinking about them, quit thinking about that 90%, accuracy is good. Hey, we have to treat this like mission critical, software. I mean, a leader's job is not to calm fears, but to be brutally clear about, every role is going to change. Every process will be, reimagined. Workforce's transitioning planning is now a core leadership, competency that I see across all these mindsets that we have to have.
Yeah, great feedback. Thanks for that, John. All right, we're going to jump into a survey question. Then Santosh, we're going to answer your first question while we're doing it. The first question is, how aligned is your AI strategy across the organization and business unit? Everybody wants to take a quick peruse and then fill it out. We'll see what the audience promotes. And then while we're doing that as well, Santosh, we'd love to answer your first question. So Pooja, let me push this one over to you if you don't mind. The question is, how do we restrict data leaking to avoid being non-compliant while using agents?
Yeah, I'm glad you're asking this question. Let me start by saying it's not necessary you'll have a data leak when you're using AI. In fact, if you're choosing the right service provider, you will not have any data leak. For example, when you implement AI from Microsoft, we don't even train our models on your data. These are pre-trained models. These models will run on your data and give you benefit for you. You can fine-tune them for yourself. There should not be any data leak. So to answer your question, how do you restrict data leak? Choose the right service provider. Choose a company which you can trust. Choose a model or a company that helps you govern, put the guardrails, have the right security and privacy, ensure there is no leak. When we are building our models and when we're creating scenarios, we also ensure not just that we're not training based on your data, there's no leak outside the organization, even within the teams, it's all governed by the rules and the authorization setup that you've done. So to simply answer, choose the right service provider.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. That is important. And when you look at the Microsoft ecosystem, it's a great place to start. All right. So the survey questions, speedboats going in opposite directions, organizational alignment, consensus, number one killer to any good initiative. So again, get your teams aligned, focus on the priorities, and make sure you clearly communicate. So that was interesting data. So thank you for that. All right, we have one more question, and then we're going to go into the last question in the chat window. Again, may have time for another question, so if anyone wants to ask, feel free to enter in. Okay, so we've talked about the blockers. We've talked about the areas for improvement that we need to focus on and things along those lines. Balance, people, process, technology. How do you approach this? John.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really, a multi-headed, I guess, question there. Mm-hmm. And looking at that, it really kind of, cuts into the heart of why some organizations thrive in the, AI era while other ones kind of falter. So, I mean, really, approaching your AI business transformation demands a structured, holistic mindset. Treat it not as a bolt-on technology, kind of like what I was saying before. I mean, really treat this as, an enterprise, AI enterprise, software, project. I mean, you really got to kind of take your, put yourself in, into a lot of those areas, which is going to, again, reimagining, how your enterprise, creates value, whether across, multiple teams, whether it be operations, sales, marketing, customer service, finance, I mean, all these different areas. So, mm-hmm. I mean, all of them are uniquely different, but I mean, I guess what Jamie was saying before is just making sure you're bringing the right people, to the table. I mean, that's going to be the biggest piece there and the biggest value.
Yeah, absolutely. And Pooja had mentioned earlier, use cases and the workflows help define that. So what we always recommend is start with the use case. That will help you understand the people, the process, and the automation, how people use it, how the journeys kind of move throughout the organization, and then where the blockers are between technology and process and people as well. That will help you clear the path to really accelerate your AI project. So Pooja, what are you seeing and what do you, I mean, you talk to hundreds of customers. So what are some of the number one recommendations you make?
Yeah, I think some of these we've already spoken about, starting with the workflow, building trust early. Besides this, I would say it's important to define clear success signals. Ensure that you have in mind what are you trying to achieve. Are you looking at time saved, error reduction, more satisfaction? Have goals, build telemetry to measure this and have an impact clearly defined. That way you're very clear on where you're going, and invest equally in people as well as capability uplift. So you should train, upskill, manage change management, and your AI story is as strong as the confidence that you build in people using it. So I think these are two more key items I would like to add.
I'm glad you brought up KPIs. You have to have that KPI tied to your use cases, and the outcome is revenue uplift or OpEx reduction, and make them smart, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time bound. That's a great add. I'm glad you brought that up, Pooja. Jamie, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, I think so. A big part of this, to have things to be successful, you have to create what I call a pattern interrupt, where we are very predictable in how we roll out these types of initiatives in the past, depending upon the complexity and of the organization. We don't want necessarily to be, in order to drive this new behavior, we don't want to be predictable. We want to be memorable. And what I mean by that is being really intentional about how we are like if you don't typically, we see what did it say, speedboats in different directions. And if that's the way we're going, like, how do we then acknowledge that and then shift how we are like that, again, that co-creation. We have to really change the way that people are thinking about their thinking when it comes to like any sort of new initiative. And that requires something to be different. Nothing changes if nothing changes. So as I'm looking at the people, and what I thought was super, I realized this when we chatted before the session, Greg, where we have a representation here. There's really like 4 kinds of people. Yes. There are fast people. I'm a fast person, a people person. These are the people that are in your organization that want to drive, the new AI technologies. They're breaking rules, boundaries, need for speed. They're the innovators. You have what I call the facts people. These are the people, the bottom liners. A lot of your executives, they just want the results. They don't care how you get it done, just get the results. You've got the focus people, which are a lot of your technologists and people in operations. They want to understand the steps and the workflow. And you have what I call your feel people. And your feel people are your people. And ironically, Greg, without even you knowing this, because you are so intentional, because I've known you for a long time, you put us all together in this session, and all of us fit in each of the quadrants. And so you have a balanced session here today where you're hearing different perspectives. And why this is important is because if you're speaking back to tying it back to what I said in the beginning, we speak from our own needs. And so if I'm communicating only from a process perspective, I'm missing the mark in 75% of my conversations, because my employees, my customers, they don't all sit in my quadrant. And so even if I was to poll the people that are on the call right now on the webinar, and even if you're comfortable, put it in the chat, what was the thing that stood out for you today? What was one thing that stood out to you, something new that stood out to you most today? And I guarantee each of you had something different. And that's because we're understanding we're coming from our own background. So how this was designed today, Greg, was a way to really optimize for AI transformation and effectiveness. So designing it for human behavior, that would be my main recommendation. How do humans think, work, behave? When we do that, we meet them where they are, help them understand, right, from their perspective, not just ours, the results, the performance increases.
Yeah, love it. Great comments. Wow, what a keynote speaker group that we have from that standpoint. I mean, I think we covered a lot. We do have one more question that we're going to ask. And the question is, who are all, roles in an organization that need to be involved in making decisions on implementing business critical, customer impacting AI use cases? John, why don't you close on this one, just from a go-to-market perspective, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think you touched upon them, right away. I've heard this a couple different times, but number one is really making sure you got the right roles in there to really kind of assess and strategize. So kind of begin with that rigorous self-assessment. Map out your current capabilities, your data maturity, your AI readiness, across functions, and identify high impact use cases. And Greg, you've said that a lot throughout this. But absolutely, you want to go tackle making sure that you've got those written down. Where AI can drive measurable outcomes such as efficiency gains or revenue growth. That kind of like that second step is really building that foundations and that those capabilities. Invest in the enablers in those roles. Robust data platforms. We talked about that. Talent upskilling, a big piece. Ethical governance and frameworks. Those pieces are out there to allow you to monitor them. Address adoption barriers head on, such as workforce readiness and compliance with emerging regulations that you may have inside your industry. So really kind of like adopt that AI first leadership model. And third, really kind of implement, scale and iterate. McKinsey recently came out with a great article on this and really kind of like piloting, high priority use cases with machine learning operations for seamless deployment, then scale enterprise wide, right? Monitor that realization through the KPIs that Pooja was talking about, like ROI. But I also stress, as a KPI, put user adoption up there, monitor user adoption, constantly looking for feedback on how they're using it. Forbes really says it like this. In summary, a lot of the successful AI transformation hinges on your strategic integrations, disciplined execution, and a relentless focus on value. Those organizations that move beyond automation to reshape their business models will start to pull ahead and see a lot of the gains that they wanted to realize at the beginning. So again, it starts really back, what challenges are we solving? We've been doing that for a long time. Get your use cases out there, get your KPIs, monitor, all those things, and constantly looking for feedback and driving growth.
Yeah, great color commentary, John. Thank you for that. And Lori, you are not alone. Others are feeling what you're feeling. You have a support mechanism. Check out the Win Room. Go connect with Jamie, Pooja, John. And thank you, everyone, on behalf of CompuSoft Digital, Microsoft, the Win Room. Thank you for taking time out of your day. I hope you found it educational, informative, and more importantly, fun.